Heritage Preservation Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bonin, Davies,
Here.
Mueller, Pleiss,
Here.
Racias,
Here.
Welbert,
Here.
and Chairperson Coleman.
Here. That moves us on to item number 3, adopting the agenda.
So
Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Would anyone like to make a motion?
So move.
Motion by Davies, seconded by
I'll second.
Welbert, to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All ayes, motion carries. That moves us on to item number 4, visitor presentation. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about something that is not already on the agenda? If
There's
not,
nobody online either.
okay. If not,
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't been to a in-person meeting with
Are you,
Ann.
oh, yeah, you're sitting right there. It's been a while.
Where am I sitting?
Right on the corner by Place.
welcome, Ann. Now we will move on to item number 5, approving the previous HPC minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the May 3rd, 2002 HPC minutes? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Welbert, second.
I'll second.
Second by Racis, to approve the May 3rd, 2022 HPC minutes. All in favor say aye.
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 All ayes, motion carries. That moves us on to item number 6, consent agenda. There are no consent items, so we will move to item number 7, action
So we just have one item posted on there being postponed. It's for the Chaska Yards project, or the S-Lot in the Ernst home. We just wanted to put it on there that it did get postponed because it did get publicized in the newspaper. So anytime it gets publicized or notice is sent out, we do need to inform at least the agenda and whoever else may be listening that public hearing has been postponed. The next tentative date that's planned for is, sorry, bear with me, would be February 7th is our next HPC meeting date. That is our tentative schedule for when that public hearing would be available. But another notice will go out if that's the meeting that they are on schedule for. So just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. So to reiterate, the item number 7A is postponed until a future HPC meeting date.
Yes.
That moves us on to item number 8, discussion items. Discussion items. 8A, discuss downtown business rear entrance design guidelines.
Yep, so we have Elise Durbin here. She's with the City of Chaska. She's the Assistant City Administrator, but she has been directly working on a project with the downtown businesses to develop a design manual or guideline manual that can be handed out to businesses or contractors, anyone who's looking at potentially making any modifications to the rear portions of businesses within downtown. Just giving a brief summary, and she'll get into it a little bit more, but this is all kind of stemming from the Highway 41 project with the improvements happening this year. There's been some ongoing development on the business side of things in terms of what's happening within the paseos, within the mid-block alleyways, specifically, what block is this again? Between Second and Third, a lot of design work has been happening there, and a lot of focus on kind of how those edges and entrances in the back portion of the buildings are really treated as most of the parking, or all of the parking along Highway 41 will be eliminated, so a lot of the pedestrian traffic is really going to be rerouted to the back side of the building. So this is really coming from that kind of change in pedestrian traffic, and hoping that this will be a resource for businesses to use as they're starting to think about, how to really reactivate or activate those entrances on the back portion of the building. So I'm going to hand it over to Elise, and she's going to give a presentation regarding that.
Thank you, Liz. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for having me this evening and coming out. And as Liz mentioned, looking for some feedback tonight from you on these design guidelines. The intention would be is to gain that feedback from you and then update the draft that you have included in your packet, along with some other things that I'll talk about in the presentation, and bring it back to you for final approval. So as Liz talked about, this item is, it was based off of what happened or what is going to happen this summer with Highway 41. And I've taken a more narrow view on the screen in front of you, basically from 2nd to 61, but this is part of a larger project. So as you can see, the roadway layout is changing. And just to give you some background, there will be 1 through lane in each direction, unlike it is today with 2 through lanes, but there will be dedicated turn lanes. In addition to that, there will be increased sidewalk width. So what's out there today, it'll be at least double what it is, really creating that pedestrian-friendly environment. But with all of that, what happens is that on-street parking on the east side of Highway 41 gets eliminated. And so to compensate for that, the city's been out purchasing what has maybe seemed existing lots out there, but privately owned, that will now become public parking lots. And in fact, all those parking lots are purchased. And the ones that are on the north end, near 4th and 5th, those parking lots were actually completed this year. The one between 2nd and 3rd is still undergoing some work, and that'll happen in early 2023 here once the construction season begins. Also, as a part of it, I just want to point out, and you can it's hard to tell on this particular view, is this idea of a paseo. So instead of having, vehicle traffic can still run on the paseo. However, it'll be more kind of pedestrian oriented. So in addition to the increased sidewalks on Highway 41, we will have this alternative walkway system, behind 41 there, kind of in what is known as the existing alleyways. So all of that really kind of started to get us to think about, how do people access, these buildings, in particular the buildings between 2nd and 3rd. That's not to say that the buildings on the west side, I think between 2nd and 3rd have done, a good job at kind of at least having those rear entrances. But because this hasn't been primarily used as a parking lot for those businesses between 2nd and 3rd on the east side, we've been looking at, what can we do? So as we mentioned, the customers will really access these businesses differently. In addition, visitors will be accessing downtown Chaska differently. So what can we do to improve that? So really that focuses on the rear entrance. And as you can see, the pictures here kind of portray that paseo. So the first picture, actually both pictures are from the north end, or taken from 3rd Street looking south. So that the building with the kind of the green awning there would be Von Hansen's, to give you an idea of the direction that we're looking. So you can see that walkway being activated, as well as the parking that would be envisioned, or that will be happening. So we hired Hoysenton Kogler Group, who's done a significant amount of work here in downtown Chaska and in Chaska in general, to develop a design manual. And to outline kind of the process that they've gone through at this point in time is they've reviewed previous documents, and those were outlined in your memos that you're all very familiar with. And additionally, a key part of this project was to have one-on-one meetings with the business and property owners, in particular between second and third, and we were able to meet with almost all of them to really kind of get their feedback on what this would mean. And they were really energized about this whole idea of being able to look at this differently and to get ideas. So we heard some great feedback of that. It's been incorporated into the design manual. So I'll just, the design manual is included. It sounds like you all haven't received the packet until pretty much today, so we can take some time going through that, or as you have time to go through that and provide feedback at a different point in time, we'd certainly take that feedback. But really the focus areas that are included in your packet right now are on doors and windows. And each one of these is a section, you'll notice, and it goes through kind of some of those guidelines essentially. So if we're looking at the doors and windows, you can see there's 7 kind of guidelines to help guide business and property owners as to what would we like to see as the city. And then additionally on each page are some examples from around the country. We'd like to get some more local examples, but around the country of, places that have done it right, that we could see it, happening here in Chaska. So those focus areas that we have are doors and windows, exterior materials, awnings and canopies, lighting, signage and wayfinding, plants and planters, and private outdoor spaces. And I will note, where appropriate, we've gone back and we've, referenced city code or the zoning ordinance to make sure that we are, consistent among these different resources. As we continue on with the final draft, we will have a page on the purpose, the background, objectives, and applicability of the project. So really kind of just that first page to kind of kick things off. Additionally, we'd like to add at the end, how do folks go about making these improvements? What sort of process do they need to follow, whether that's just permits, what sort of applications do they have to fill out, do they need to come in front of you? How does that process look to help them, give an idea of that length of time that it'll take? And then additionally, we envision having more photos and examples as well. So when we come back to you with a final draft, you'll see all this incorporated. So really what we're looking for, I've kind of outlined 3 questions in your memo that we'd like to receive feedback on tonight or over the course of the next couple weeks, as you have time to, sit and more thoroughly review the design guidelines. So what the feedback that we're looking for tonight are there other areas beyond the 6, so the doors and the windows, the lighting, et cetera, what I had just gone through, that should be addressed in here that maybe we haven't thought about? The second question we'd like feedback on is, do the specific design guidelines in each area that have been developed make sense? Do what we have written here, make sense based upon your expertise? And is there anything that is missing or should be taken out? And then finally, what we're also looking for is, do the graphics convey what the city should be looking for? And I will tell you, when we were meeting with the businesses one-on-one, those graphics in other manuals that we have is certainly what they've gravitated towards. So having that visual example for them is extremely important. So we're wondering if you know of examples in other communities, whether locally or in your travels, that would be good to include so that we can include them as well and provide those examples. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I will turn it over to you, Chair.
A couple things. With the paseos in there, is the sidewalk going to still be available on 41 side?
Yes, it'll actually be made larger and enhanced.
Okay.
So.
And was there any thought given, and this might be a sacrilege, about putting the paseos so they connect through City Square?
That's a good question. This was done before my time. It started with the city. I think that's a great question. I don't know, Liz, if you know.
And you're wondering if a kind of linear connection could happen through City Square to connect into.
Because if you use the paseo, then you have to go down to 41 or to Walnut to get around.
Yes, with City Square being another historic property, it also has national status on it too. It would actually be a pretty big lift to try to change the trajectory of pedestrian walkways within the park. I'm sure it was considered, and I wasn't a part of those conversations, but I do know, even looking at doing some minor improvements and maintenance improvements in the park are already a big lift in itself, being that it does have national status. And so SHPO has some pretty rigid criteria that has to be met, being that it's of national status, and there's also the Indian mounds within that as well. So there's
Because-
consideration of that.
Okay. Because a gazebo is going to be fixed or replaced,
Right.
and does that come before us?
Depending on what gets fixed on it, if it's purely maintenance, it doesn't necessarily trigger HPC review on that. But if there are changes to it that are significant and different than what's out there today, then yes, you will be seeing that.
All right, thank you.
Through the discussions with the business owners and the building owners, obviously on the east side of 41, entrances, traffic is going to change quite a bit, right, towards the back of the building. I'd just be curious, some of their feedback, right? The back of most of those buildings are probably storage, staff, right? It's not customer facing. So was there some pushback on that because having to change around potentially their storefront? And then the one other item I thought that wasn't included was security. If there's any thought in and around that, because that is changing so drastically.
Chair and Commissioner, I think in our conversations with businesses, none of this is required. And so I think I just want to make that clear that we're not going and saying you have to do this.
No, that's good
This is
clarification. Thank you.
optional.
Yep.
We know that some businesses have rear entrances, like Revive Nutrition has a rear entrance already. For folks like In-Cart Tattoo, they're excited about this opportunity, but they, at this time, they can't make it happen because of health code requirements. So they're looking at other things that they might be able to do. So I wouldn't say it was necessarily pushback, but they talked about some of their limitations and challenges. But that's not to say that they weren't excited about figuring out how they might be able to kind of jazz up, for lack of a better word, that back. As far as security, I think you make a great point, and that's something we can certainly include. I think some of these things, such as doors and windows, the lighting, some of that starts to address it, but I think we can do a better job in here.
It looks fantastic, though. I'm excited to see. Finish up, but thank you.
Curious if there's anything from like financial funding, grants, incentives, or something like that that people could maybe plug into, because I imagine these could be pretty pricey things. Like I know there was, I think in one of our walkthroughs, there was some program the city had on signage or something, right? I think you mentioned, Liz, but I don't know if maybe there'd be something you could get into, like energy efficiency or changing out windows and doors and stuff like that. But I think it could be a pretty good big lift for some of these businesses to do a pretty dramatic change.
Yeah, we do have our sign grant that has been active and successful for several years now. So we do envision that being a resource for these businesses to be able to tap into if they would like to get signage on the backside of their building. So there is that program that's active, and they'll be able to have access to it if they so choose to.
Just wonder, I don't know if that could be
Yeah.
included in some of that pamphlet or something, just to make sure people are aware of those things, but, you know.
That's actually, I think, maybe a good point that can be added as a note within the manual. And I think, the comment on, are there ways for us to bolster some of our financial programming to kind of include this new take on the rear entrances? I think that's a valid question and something that we can certainly discuss further.
If I can add, we do have a storefront loan improvement program, and it says storefront. I think what I envision happening is going back and looking at that and seeing how we can make it work for all these entrances for them. And then your thought about energy efficiency, being able to connect them to some of the rebates and resources we have through our electric utility company. So great points, and yes, we do plan to include a section kind of on what financial resources there are available.
Do you know how many businesses are going to make changes right away, or is it going to be a longer thing?
The Chair and Commissioner, I am not sure how many right away. I know there was a lot of enthusiasm, but I guess we'll find out. I think some of that funding has a lot to do with it too.
Is the only place pedestrian crossings are at the stoplights, or are they at every block? Can you cross?
Do you have a slide?
The lights now are at Second and Fourth.
Yeah, so if you, and again, it might be hard to see on your
You might
screen
be able to
there.
use your cursor to,
Oh, there we go.
yeah, there
There we
we go.
go.
There's
Okay,
crosswalks at each
so here's Third, and there will be a crossing here. You can kind of see there's an enlarged median
Yeah.
to allow folks to kind of get across and then stop if they need to, and then cross the rest of the way. So similar to kind of what's out there today, because there is a crossing at Third, there is a crossing near Fifth as well, kind of by City Hall here.
Yep.
So as far as a lighted crosswalk, right, we're still looking at the ones with the lights there to get across?
Yeah.
And then further up 41, not shown here at Walnut, there will be a hawk light. So similar to what's by the Curling and Event Center, where you press the button and a light is triggered. So that'll be further up, but we won't have that south of 61.
Liz, in that, the last time we looked at this, is the Paseo different behind the bakery? Was that shown before?
I don't know if it goes
In the
through,
bakery.
I don't know if it goes through the bakery.
Well, isn't that?
Oh,
right there?
Oh,
That'd be right there.
okay.
You know, I don't think we actually looked at that section in detail yet, because I don't know how refined the design plans were at that point. In fact, I don't even think they were started on when we looked at this last. I think our focus was mainly on the Paseo points at between Second and Third and Fourth and Fifth. So anything north of that, I think was still in development stages. And I'm not sure actually the status on the north side or north of Fifth Street, how far we are in the design process. I want to say we're pretty far if it's showing up on this plan. So that actually might be something new that's been added since we last talked.
Doesn't look familiar. So in that, in the same block there, the black, is that the parking?
Yes,
Okay, what's the white?
area,
Down?
or to the
Down?
right,
Or,
or down?
Straight across the
This one?
street, so where you looking at?
Right here.
Well, right, yeah,
there?
right there.
That's
That,
the church.
from there out to,
Used to be the movie theater.
Yeah, that's the old movie theater building, and I believe it's just a concrete area in front of the parking lot there.
I was part of the
okay.
city days.
But is the majority of that space the theater?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
the theater building, yep.
and I noticed in these examples that there wasn't anything that said Shakopee, but they do a lot of the, so if you wanted to look at anything in Shakopee, I know that there's a lot of back entrances. There is in Shakopee.
Do you feel like we've hit kind of the major areas the doors and the windows, exterior materials. Do you feel like we're missing anything? And again, I realize many of you just received it this afternoon, so.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where, just given kind of the informalness of this right now, but still wanting your feedback and understanding that you didn't get this until today, are things that you can definitely follow up on in individual emails to Elise and I, if you have any other thoughts that come up after the fact. We just want to make sure that we can take that into account and plug it into the work that's been done so far.
I do like the plants and planters.
One of the, just to address that, Chair, one of the businesses in particular, the property owner at La Hermosa, was extremely excited about the opportunity to add some outdoor seating and planter areas. So that was something he really gravitated toward in this. And as well as the area by Revive Nutrition. They were really looking for some of that exterior space for their customers to be able to sit.
Did you ever get an answer to your security?
They just said it was a good thought and they were
Okay.
going to capture that, I believe, correct?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good comment to make, and there's probably ways for us to look at some of the bullet points in this manual on how to, better emphasize that.
I guess, from this, I guess, do all the businesses downtown kind of understand where they would fall in the HPC, right? Because not everybody would be part of this group, but I imagine that lengthens the construction process and stuff a little bit, or things like that, or the permitting. I'm assuming everybody knows, but that might be something to, add in there too.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're still kind of grappling with right now in terms of what that process looks like. Just for an example, when we developed and implemented the signage design guidelines, which the format and layout is very similar to this design manual, the process basically stated that if you're meeting the design manual and you're meeting the ordinance of signage in downtown, it doesn't trigger an HPC review. It's more of an expedited process, administrative with city staff. So initially, that's kind of how we're looking at this design manual is, now that you've been able to see it once and you'll see it again in a more final version, if you feel like it's set up in a way that, will successfully be implemented by businesses, there is that option for it to be more of an expedited process. But we kind of have to weigh all of that together in terms of how does it feed into a site alteration permit on other changes that businesses do. Does that automatically trigger it to have HPC review when you're changing a facade significantly like that? Or because it's in the rear portion of the property, do we look at this different? So I think those are some questions we're still kind of playing around with in terms of how the process is going to look like. But once we have that figured out, yes, we absolutely agree that the process should be really clear in this manual moving forward.
Does this, is the pergola from the bakery shown on here?
I don't think it is because they haven't implemented it yet.
No, but I mean, we approved it.
We did approve
But
it, yes.
now it looks like there's planters sort of in the area where that was going to go.
Go to the overview.
The bakery's the first one on Fifth Street there. It looks like there's
Yeah,
still
on the,
space.
yep, that one, yep.
Okay.
Oh, you mean, okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, the level of detail, especially outside of these kind of honed-in areas, these honed-in circle areas, how much of that is a part of the kind of design, overall final design piece of it. But it's a good point, you know, being that it is something that we approved and making sure that it shows up on appropriate plans. Is that your concern, or did you have other?
Well, yeah, I was just wondering if it just looked like there's like an extra set of planters. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell where the building
Yeah,
ends and.
And the medians that are already there, excuse me, they aren't leaving, they're still, everything is still there, like the medians in the middle of the road, they're gonna stay?
in the highway?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay,
They'll stay, but they'll probably be reoriented a
Okay.
little bit, just to
right.
accommodate the designated turn lanes that are planned. And then, of course, some of them will be enlarged to be those pedestrian refuge areas. So that'll definitely be an enhancement.
Are there any existing businesses downtown that have already hit on some of this? Like one that came to mind, we did it when we went on the tour this summer. There was a building on the it would have been the west side of 41. And it's a couple, I think, that really like totally gutted the building, and they own another property on the east side. I think it's their actual family home. But they did a really beautiful job, and it seemed like it hit some of the guidelines here.
Yeah.
I was just thinking as another example locally for people to reference. If you feel like it hits on some of those design elements that you're going for.
No, I think that's a great example of one that's fully finished and one that really took into account even the back side of the building as they were doing improvements. I don't think at that time they were very aware of, you know, what the backside would ultimately have an effect in terms of the design of it on kind of the overall surroundings, but they're all also just very detail-oriented people. And so the projects that they've worked on have been very exemplary, just in everything that they've done. So I think that's a great example of
Maybe
one to
just an
use.
existing North Star in the downtown area.
Yeah.
already, so.
Definitely.
Has there been any consideration given to any kind of restrooms in that, along this whole area?
Like public restrooms?
Yeah. Because I know they put up, in the summer, they have the satellites on the corner there.
You know, I'm not sure about that topic, if that's really been explored. Are you aware of anything?
On the east side, I'm not aware that it's been explored. As part of the City Square West, kind of conceptual ideas on what might happen, we've talked about some public restrooms in those plans. But again, very high-level conceptual plans at this point in time.
Because I was just thinking, if, a lot of these businesses are going to close like at 6 o'clock or something, and if you got some that have outdoor spaces that are going to be open later, I don't know. Because I know the satellites get hammered in the summer when it's events. And there isn't, I mean, a lot of times there isn't enough of them.
And I've heard from some businesses, they're asking, when are those satellites going to be put out? Because events have already started and folks are wanting to use theirs.
I see at Southwest Christian, they built a little wooden frame around, and they move them out there when they're spring sports, but it's blocked off. You can't really tell that they're, you know, the green, ugly green satellites sitting there. Some screening around it.
I've never heard them called satellites before.
Oh, did you?
It's a very nice.
Figured I knew what you're talking about, but
Yeah, I
think
haven't
that was
used
a
that
local-
terminology before.
A local company that,
yeah.
trying to
That's
polish
what
it up a little bit.
we hit on those other questions you had? Let's see.
So, yeah, I realize, yeah, kind of, one and two are a little more detailed, so, you know, take your time and review and, you know, send any email feedback to Liz and myself. I'm on that email chain that you all have been on with this packet. And we'll incorporate those into this next, draft. And I think, yeah, I appreciate, you know, some of these examples you've provided, and the more local, the better. I think it's always great when we can highlight what, you know, folks in downtown have already done.
Any other questions on that? Otherwise, yeah,
Further
like,
discussion?
nothing?
Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, I just want to further emphasize that, you know, really take the next week or two, whenever you have time, to take a look at it and see if there's any other comments that come up, and feel free to send them our way. I think our intention right now is we'd like to get this final draft with comments incorporated back to you guys in February, when we have our February 7th meeting. So if you can try to do that within the next couple weeks, I think that would be ideal, so we can bring something a little bit more cooked up for you guys and really emphasize some of these other comments to take a look at. We'll obviously keep you posted if this gets postponed to further work on it, but that's our intention right now, is to bring it back in February with kind of a more finalized version for you guys to take a look at and hopefully approve or accept, to kind of formalize it.
Back on the question on the S property, is what we're going to see different than the last thing we saw?
For concept on that one?
Yeah, for how the buildings were going to look and how are they going to lay out?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's going to be too much different than what we reviewed in, well, it's been a year since we reviewed the concept plan. The layout and the concept is very much the same. They've refined some of the details on the buildings that are proposed out there. We are still continuing to work with them on some site planning pieces that need to get a little bit more refined before we bring it back to you. And the update on that one is they initially, they wanted to come in front of you guys this evening, but since those pieces were still outstanding, we needed a little bit more time to work with that, with them on those pieces. So right now, we're hoping they'll come back for February as well. So it'll actually be kind of advantageous if we can try to get, this design manual and also the S-Lot and Ernst home on the same agenda, as they're pretty much kind of in the same, well, they're in the same block of each other, so it's good to kind of see those two pieces together. But that's the intention right now, and we'll see where we land.
Any other discussion?
Thank you for the feedback, and
Thank you.
again, we'll wait with open ears if you have anything else come up, so.
Thank you very much for, thank you. That moves us on to item number 9, other business. Does anybody have any other business that hasn't been discussed? Commissioner Bonin?
No.
Commissioner Place?
No.
Commissioner Welbert?
Not at the moment.
Commissioner Davies?
Nope.
Commissioner Races?
No.
Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Well, I would like to add one other thing.
Oh,
Don't forget staff
how
over
about,
here.
how about the city planner, Liz Hanson?
No, I just wanted to give you just a quick update on another project that we worked on earlier in 2022, was the Idle House. We helped them with some feedback on a potential detached garage going on that property, since They've recently platted the property to be its own separate lot apart from the Jonathan Playground there. So you guys gave them feedback on just some things to keep in mind if they were to pursue a detached garage on the property, which has been extremely helpful. I just wanted to inform you that the plat did get approved through the city, so it went through the full process with the city and it got recorded at the county. But the reason it kind of happened so quickly was they actually did secure a buyer for the property. So as far as I'm concerned, and this is information being shared from the Jonathan Association, is they did find a preservationist couple to buy the property. So these are people who are passionate about historic preservation, and I think it sounds like they're very excited to own this property and restore it and hopefully do some amazing things with it. So I just wanted to share that information because usually things like that don't happen as quickly. And safe to say this one landed in the right hands, it sounds like. So I think their closing is at the end of this month, and we have yet to make communication with them directly, but we'll see if we start to see plans or just talks of them wanting to do some updates on the property. So that's exciting.
Cool.
So I wanted to share that
Very cool.
exciting information with you guys.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Yep.
Just asking. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Commissioner Welvert, second? Commissioner Ricius? We are adjourned.